Place 10 of the best base defense games goes to Forts, which is an exceptional example of how a game can properly integrate many mechanics from multiple genres and get it right. Forts is a fun 2D RTS with some interesting new mechanics thrown in. It suffers from a few bugs and an unnecessary story, but is generally an entertaining experience. The fast-paced challenge of managing multiple tasks before you're obliterated creates a sense of urgency and an increased heart rate that you wouldn't normally find from a title that simply leverages one of these mechanics. Forts is a simple, fun game, has a nice sense of humor, and is guaranteed to get your brain whirling as you figure out the best way to build your base, defend your weapons, while also pelting the enemy with bullets and bombs. Unfortunately, you'll probably complete it with minimal fuss, but the developers do claim Forts has been made with modding in mind. Forts has been well designed and implemented. The controls and gameplay are simple, and the levels are generally quite engaging. Having the 3 difficulty settings will no doubt allow gamers of all ages and skill levels to enjoy themselves as they watch the enemy fort explode into countless pieces. The campaign mode can get a little familiar by the time you hit the middle levels, but the variation in visual settings and secondary goals does make it more interesting. And the developers have been patching and adding new features to the game, and it is great to see that they are quick to fix any issues that the community is having, whilst adding their own improvements to the game. With the fun visuals and dialogue, Forts is a great game for everyone in the family. Place 9 of the best base defense games goes to King Arthur's Gold, one of the best indie games you can find on the internet. The background reminds you of good old Super Nintendo times. Be ready to defend your castle, build it and repair it. You can choose between 3 classes, the Knight, the Archer and the Builder. Best build and destroy game you can play on PC. The building phase is just long enough to make some base, and then you have to conquer the enemy base, which is a lot of fun, especially in long run when resources are low. King's Arthur Gold is not the Terraria clone that you would expect looking at the screens. It has its own pace and fresh game modes. It is an interesting mix of retro graphics, medieval battles and fortress builder. This game is a great multiplayer game that stands out from the crowd by being something that embraces lunacy and remains grounded with simple mechanics that allow for a variety of strategies. Place 8 of the best base defense games goes to Orcs Must Die 2. The near-flawless execution on every level makes the brilliant concepts at the game's core shine through with perfect clarity. Even if you've never played or so much as heard of the original game, Orcs Must Die 2 is worth a place of honor in your collection. An incredibly robust and enjoyable take on the tower defense genre. Tight controls, a plethora of options, and a general fun factor that keeps you coming back again and again and again. It is hard not to love this game. Even after the last level is over, endless mode is always there to taunt you to try harder. A brilliant update to the original game. The additions improve the core values of Orcs Must Die and makes it a bigger and better game. It has its flaws, like a poor design of some maps, but the co-op, the improved character development and the endless mode are fantastic improvements. Despite its quirky, comical outer shell, it's a game that has a surprising amount of depth to it, a characteristic that makes it both challenging and satisfying. Whether you're a fan of all-out balls-to-the-wall action games, or more of a strategy connoisseur, Orcs Must Die definitely deserves your undivided attention. Place 7 of the best base defense games goes to Dig or Die. The game is basically Terraria. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have the massive variety and polish of Terraria's crafting system, doesn't have the interesting biomass of Terraria, doesn't have the crazy enemies of Terraria, and it doesn't make allusions to Lovecraftian horror. Dig or Die is more than just a clone of the titles that inspired it. It adds challenging gameplay in the form of aggressive and fearsome monsters, as well as a building system that requires some thought. In addition to this, the unique art style and audio that sets the scene perfectly lets the game stand out from others. If you like games like Terraria and Starbound but are looking for something new, Dig or Die is definitely worth your time. It provides an incredibly challenging and new twist on the genre. But be advised, they aren't kidding about the dying part. You're going to do that a lot. Dig or Die attempts to make up for its shortcomings with a simple yet engaging experience, where remaining active, steadily building, and fighting back is a must. Place 6 of the best base defense games goes to Kingdom 2 Crowns, which is a little jewel. A pleasure in terms of exploration, survival and management that can be fully played in cooperation. The game has a splendid artistic direction and an extraordinary sound atmosphere. Almost dreamlike. Too bad the game looks more like a New Lands DLC than a real new episode. Behind pixel graphics, 2D perspective and minimalistic controls, hides an amazingly complex strategy game. However, if you need a strategy game to be first and foremost a good strategy game, you should look elsewhere. In Kingdom 2 Crowns, players must work in the solo or co-op campaign mode to build their kingdom and secure it from the threat of the greed. Experience new technology, units, enemies, mounts, and secrets in the next evolution of the award-winning micro-strategy franchise. Place 5 of the best base defense games goes to Rise to Ruins, which is a regularly updated brutal godlike village sim that melds the god game, management, and tower defense genres. Fight off hordes of monsters at night and expand your village in the daytime. Inspired by games like Black and White, Rimworld, and War Fortress, but not quite like any of them. Rise to Ruins is a very impressive management game with lots of depth and replayability. It is easy to sink many hours into this game. The developer works on this game constantly, resulting in frequent content additions, updates, bug fixes, etc. It is always nice to see a developer continue to support a game, especially one like this one that has no microtransactions or paid DLC. A fun management game with tower defense style combat, individual colonist stats and god game mechanics. The blend is like a smoothie that just works. It's cured the colony management itch really well and has plenty of tools for automation, allowing you to focus on important things like summoning fireballs and lightning storms. The 4th place of the best base defense games goes to Terraria, which is the best Minecraft clone on the market. The open sandbox creation genre is still rising, and Terraria is a good, solid, and inexpensive entry. This game is a small production that offers a cross between Mario and Minecraft, or like a 2D platformer with craftsmanship and free construction. Quite limited in its realization, this title makes you play immediately for hours if you like the concept. Still, Terraria is a great adventure, one of the best sandbox games around. It's well worth checking out for anyone, regardless of how they feel about Minecraft. Terraria is an amazingly enchanting game that can suck in from the moment you start playing. With great pixel art, endearing music and lots of retro aspects, Terraria can occupy you for years to come. Especially, with all the mod support and the large community it is besides Minecraft a classic survival and sandbox game. Regardless of how you approach things, though, the basic rhythm of this astonishing piece of work remains the same. For your first few hours, Terraria will seem like a bewildering, occasionally terrifying, strain of chore. Put in the effort, though, and it eventually reveals its true nature. This isn't a game or even a toy. At heart, it's a vocation. The 3rd place of the best base defense games goes to Rimworld, which is a new standard in survival and strategy simulation games, and has emerged from early access with grace. Everything is about stories. Rimworld sets you up for an ever-changing game, in which only your engagement remains the same, potentially for hundreds of hours. And when you're done with the vanilla version of Rimworld, there are thousands of mods that enhance or change the game in such a way that it is all fresh again. This strategy game offers survival and business simulation in one package. With the player learning from trial and error, numerous unpredictable events bring additional challenges to solve, while enriching the story at the same time. It is as satisfying colony building sandbox with a lot of replayability that suffers from a lack of polish in the UI. A great aesthetic and quirky sci-fi take on the genre mean there is a lot to like here, it just takes a little digging to get there. Overall, it is a successful mixture of strategy, tower defense, survival sandbox and sci-fi story generator, with a guaranteed high replay value. The second place of the best base defense games goes to Factorio, which is a construction and management simulation game. It is a resource management, factory simulation and strategy game. The goal is to build up plants that automatically take resources and make products, which takes the burden off you. The endgame is launching a rocket into space, but there's a whole lot you need to do in order to get there. However you approach Factorio, and there are a number of ways you can start your adventure, you'll undoubtedly be constructing lines of manufacturing automation. Here's a basic example of a product being created. Iron ore is smelted into iron plates, which is then turned into cogs that are then combined with another iron plate to create a conveyor belt. You can just build non-stop until the game engine or your computer can't handle it anymore. Factorio is an early access game on Steam done right, thanks to active development, a modding scene and highly addictive gameplay. It's just fantastic to sit back after 20 hours on a single playthrough and gaze at the marvel of your creation. There are no issues with the gameplay, and the game engine is excellent at handling even the most complex factory setups. That said, if you're not a fan of grinding elements, management simulation games or logic-based calculations and planning, you should avoid Factorio. Otherwise, this is a great simulation game with tower defense elements, which can consume hours of your time trying to optimize your factory. The first place of the best base defense games goes to They Are Billions. This game offers an almost perfect gameplay loop, mixing tower defense with city building and exploration, as you balance resource management, defense and defense, all against your ever-impending doom at the hands of a world infested with the undead. The only downside to a game that looks and sounds great, offering a tense experience in a compelling setting, is a campaign that doesn't fully make use of the gameplay loop perfected by Numension Games, leaving the campaign feeling weak compared to the survival mode, which is the real draw. They Are Billions is a game based on just a single trick that's up its undead sleeve. But it's a hell of a trick, one that'll keep you ensnared in its tangled web of survival for dozens and dozens of hours, as the undead march upon your best base building efforts. It is an interesting mashup of classic RTS, tower defense, and survival that successfully conjures up that one more game feel, assuming you can persevere through countless defeats. The mixture of base building, expansion and defense works well, especially in survival mode.